Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. This is Science Lectures 256. Don't forget to like, subscribe and follow us. So today we are beginning a new series which is Applied Phycology. And for your instructions today I will be teacher sulfite. So as usual this is Science Lectures 256 and I just need to remind you if you need these slides, a link will be in the description box below, and if you need still detailed notes explaining these slides for your revision purposes, there's also a link to take you where you access them, and please purchase them and support us so that we can continue simplifying the science mystery. So we are going to discuss phycology. We are going to basically talk about algae, algae, algae and its applications, because phycology is the study of algae, and since it is applied phycology, so we are going to see how algae is used in our day-to-day life. Briefly, we said algae is a member of kingdom Protocista, and algae is a full phylum. However, many of the algae resemble plants because they are able to carry out photosynthesis, or they are able to manufacture their own food, and many of them are aquatic. However, the major dichotomy between plants and algae is the plant does not have any roots. Algae doesn't have any roots, stems, leaves, vascular tissues, and has simply relatively small reproductive structures. Yeah, algae varies in size from the smallest, that is microscopic, to the largest, that is 50 meters. For example, you can see these seaweeds here. When you look at them, you would think that they are plant. However, um, this is also algae. This shows you the diversity within phylum algae. So these are some of the examples of algae. This is green algae. This is red algae. Red algae. These are the seaweeds I was talking about. This is golden algae. Slime molds here. Slime molds are not algae, though they are under kingdom Protocista, but they are what we call fungi-like organisms. This is red algae. This is spirogyra, which is also an example of algae. So, what are the characteristics of algae? What makes up algae? What should something have to be called algae? Number one, it's supposed to have, all algae is usually made up of unicellular. Algae is usually unicellular, that means it is one cell thick. However, as we've seen, they are multicellular algae, but multicellular algae lack sterile tissue. What that simply means, all the cells that make up that algae are potent. They are able to produce young ones. They are able to form gametes or spores, or when they fragment away, they're able to form new algae. Then number two, algae does not form an embryo after fertilization. So algae is a non-embryo phyte. Then algal body are not organized into tissues. It's just a single mass of cells. The algal body is thalloid, or the body is made up of a thallus. Thallus, we said, that plant body that is not differentiated into roots, stems, and leaves. And algae is mainly aquatic. Aquatic is simply means it is usually found in water, but however, algae has an ubiquitous or cosmopolitan distribution, as we are going to discuss. So, we need to talk about the various algal habitats. Where do we find algae? So, algal habitats are classified into four. We have freshwater here, we have marine algae, we have algae found on land, and we have algae that occupies unusual habitats. So we begin with freshwater. Freshwater, that means this is algae located within freshwater systems. And we have two types of freshwater systems, or freshwater ecosystems. We have stagnant, freshwater systems. But the other thing is, freshwater systems are those systems that have low salinity waters. So We are saying we have two types of freshwater systems. We have the lentic freshwater system and the lotic freshwater ecosystem. So lentic means stagnant, lotic means moving. So examples of lentic freshwater sources, we have ponds, we have lakes, while examples of the lotic ones, streams, rivers, and the likes. So algae found within, we have algae found within lakes, and we have algae that is found within rivers. However, algae located within rivers suffers from being swayed away by the water. As we said, these are moving ecosystems. So they've developed mechanisms to enable them survive being swept by water currents. An example is a cladophora has attachment discs called hepatrons, while some other algae like Chara and Nitera have rhizoids. The importance of those attachment discs and rhizoids is to make sure that this algae is firmly attached to a substratum or any structure so that it can set pace to carry out other life processes. And however, many of the algae within freshwater systems exist as phytoplankton, and which is what fish feed on. And they've developed mechanisms to reduce their sinking in water. Some are buoyant, some are lightweight, others so they're able to survive within the freshwater systems. Number two, we have marine algae, algae found in waters with high salt content. No, algae found in saline waters, for example, in oceans and in seas. We have terrestrial algae, algae found on land, and terrestrial algae either saprophytes or cryptophytes. Saprophytes are algae that occur above the soil surface, for example, rocks, logs, etc. Then you have cryptophytes, are algae that occur under the soil surface. Then we have algae that occupies unusual habitats. Um, some of the examples of those algae that occupy unusual habitats, we have halophytes. These are algae with a high salt content that occur in areas with high salt concentration. Best example here in Uganda, we have Lake Katwe that is extremely salty, but there is algae that survives within that lake. For example, the Chlamydomonas ehrembaji. Then we have algae that grows on top of other algae, or they grow on top of plants, and that is epiphytic algae. For example, microspora grows on top of cladophora. Then we have epizoic algae. Epi means surface. So these algae are simply found on the surface of aquatic animals, or they are found attached on aquatic animals. For example, the cladophora crispata that grows on snails. Then we have endozoic algae. This algae here, this algae that grows or that is found within animal tissues. For example, the cholera that is found within the Hydra viridis. Hydra viridis is an animal under phylum Coelenterata, and the same phylum, that is, we have jellyfish, jellyfish, the Portuguese man of war, and other types of animals. So another example actually is the corals. The corals house algae, which algae we said manufactures food for them. So such type of algae is called endozoic algae. Then we have algae that forms associations that are beneficial with other organisms. For example, members of the genus Nostoc form symbiotic associations with fungi to come up with lichens. Then we have cryophytes, algae that grow in areas that have snow or ice. For example, that Ancyalonema, which gives a purple color to snow. Then we have lithophytes. These are algae that grow on top of rocks and stones. For example, Rivularia. Then we have parasitic algae. This is algae that causes diseases to other organisms. For example, that's Cephaloreas brisens that causes red dust in tea and coffee plantations. Then we have thermophytes, algae that survives in areas where temperatures are between 50 to 70 degrees Celsius, where normal life is impossible. That's, for example, Oscillatoria brevis. So I have some illustrations here. We have Glynodomonas eherembaji here. Where is my cursor? Yes. Glynodomonas eherembaji here. We have the Cladifora crispata here, the one that we said that grows on snows. This is a lichen. We said it is an association between algae of the members of the genus Nostoc and fungi. Shall discuss that more when we start looking at mycology. Then we have this algae, the Ancylonema, that gives the purple color to snow. We've talked of this Cephalarius that causes tea and that causes red rust in tea and coffee. Then this is an example of green algae under the ocean. So that summarizes the algae, the algal habitats. Please make sure or feel free to ask any question in the comment section. Our handlers will let us know. So we continue discussing reproduction in algae. How does algae reproduce? So algae has three forms of reproduction. It reproduces vegetatively, it reproduces asexually, and it reproduces sexually. Excuse me. It reproduces vegetatively, what we call vegetative propagation or vegetative reproduction. It reproduces asexually, what we call sporulation. Then it reproduces sexually. So we begin with vegetative reproduction or vegetative propagation. So vegetative reproduction or vegetative propagation is simply a process or a summary of all processes that involve reproduction in algae, where the plant body becomes separated, it becomes separated from others to give rise to new individuals without any obvious change in the protoplast. Without obvious change in the protoplast. Best case scenario is when you get your book, a 96-page book, and you pluck out, let's say, two papers from in between. Yes, you've plucked out something, but the change is not so obvious. So also algae sometimes reproduces using such mechanisms. And the first mechanism, and it's the most common mode of reproduction in algae. The first common mechanism is cell division. Cell division. So in cell division, algae just undergoes mitosis to form two daughter cells. You have one daughter cell. The daughter cell splits into, actually splits, divides to form two daughter cells, and each daughter cell will form a new algal body. So, and it's very common in unicellular algae, for example, Glynodomonas. And then we have fragmentation, as you hear, fragment. So here algae breaks down into small portions or fragments, and each fragment is able to form a new thallus. We already said the algal body is thalloid. So each fragment is able to form a new thallus, and it is very common in filamentous algae, for example, Spirogyra. So the fragmentation into filaments, the fragmentation of the filaments can be because of mechanical pressure, it can be because of dissolution of the transverse walls between the adjacent filaments. And algae, especially under favorable condition, blue-green algae under unfavorable condition forms what we call homogonia. It forms what we call homogonia. So what are homogonia? Homogonia are short motile filaments, of blue-green algae of variable length. So you have, let's say, a full strand of blue-green algae, and that strand is divided into filaments, filaments of variable length. So the formation of homogonia can be because of intercalary heterocysts. When we discuss in mycology, we said, I know when we discuss in plant functions, we said blue-green bacteria forms heterocysts as a mechanism of compartmentalization of the nitrogenase enzyme from having any contact with oxygen. So sometimes formation of intercalary heterocysts stimulates formation of homogonia. Sometimes death and decay of intercalary cells will stimulate formation of homogonia, or the bacteria will form what we call necroidia. Necroidia are simply specialized separation discs. So the other way algae reproduces vegetatively is by formation of adventitious thalli. So sometimes large algae can form branches. Adventitious is simply branch. So when these branches fall off, they form new algal bodies. Or sometimes some algal species form tubers, just like the ones you know in cassava. So they form tubers, and when these tubers become detached from the parent plant, they will form other algae. Then I also said algae reproduces asexually, what we call sporulation. So sporulation simply means formation of spores, and when these spores are liberated or dispersed, they grow to form new algal thalli. And there are two types of spores. We have what they call zoospores and aplanospores. As you hear, zoo simply animal, and animals are characteristically known to be motile. So zoospores are motile or flagellated spores, and they are produced in what we call a zoosporangium, which you're seeing here. This is a zoosporangium, and within the zoosporangium we have the zoospores, and you can see the zoospores have the flagella. So these flagella enable them to swim from the mother. After some time, they will germinate to form new individuals, and zoospores are very common in aquatic algae. And as I said, there are two types of spores: zoo and aplanospores. So zoospores motile, aplanospores are non-motile spores, and they are common in terrestrial algae. The aplanospores are distinct from the spores in a way that aplanospores have a well-developed cell wall, and aplanospores are also produced in anaplanosporangium, as you see. So this is anaplanosporangium, and within the aplanosporangium we have aplanospores. So there are different types of aplanospores. The first one are tetraspores. So tetraspores, as you hear, tetra means four. So tetraspores are spores produced in a structure. They are produced in a structure called a tetrasporangium in groups of four. As you see in here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 tetraspores within a tetrasporangium. Then we have what they call hypnospores. Hypnospores are simply thick cell-walled aplanospores. These ones here are the hypnospores, thick cell-walled aplanospores. Then we have what they call autospores. So autospores, as you hear, auto, photocopy, auto, same. Yes? So these ones first acquire parental characteristics, or they first acquire features from the parent cells before they are liberated. Then algae is unique in such a way that sometimes if it doesn't have the spores, it can synthesize them on spot. And we have that is why we have what they call akinets. So akinets are simply spores formed when vegetative cells are converted into thick-walled spores with food reserves. What happens? The algae, um, under certain light intensity and given amount of carbohydrates, will get normal cells and convert them into spores. And many of the times, the akinets have been observed to be red because they accumulate a pigment called hematochrome. So that summarizes asexual reproduction in algae. So then we look at sexual reproduction in algae. So sexual reproduction is the most advanced form of reproduction, and as you hear sexually is supposed to be a fusion somewhere, fusion of gametes somewhere, and it's the most advanced form of reproduction in algae, and it tends to create new genetic combinations. So there are three types of sexual reproduction in algae. We have isogamy, anisogamy, and ugamy. So what is isogamy? Isogamy simply is the fusion of gametes which are morphologically similar but physiologically different. The gametes, when you look at them, this and when you look at a blue cap and a blue cap, they look the same. So, but the main inside is different. So, in isogamy, we have fusion of gametes that are morphologically similar and but physiologically different. And the gametes involved here are what we call isogametes. As we are iso means same. So the gametes here, for example, here we have this gamete and this gamete. You see they are the same in structure, and when the two fuse together, we form what we call a zygospore. Then here we have our gametes produced in what we call a gametangium. In a gametangium. So isogamy, fusion of gametes that look alike, but their physiology is different. And when the two fuse, we form what we call a zygospore. And isogamy is the most primitive mode of sexual reproduction in algae. Then we have what they call anisogamy. Anisogamy is now the fusion of gametes that differ in structure. They differ in structure. We have large gametes and we have small gametes. The large gametes are what we call macrogametes, and these macrogametes are very few in number and they are less motile, while the smaller gametes are called microgametes, and these microgametes are very many in number and they are highly motile. The macrogametes are produced in a macrogametangium, while the microgametes are produced in a microgametangium. And when we have the fusion of a macrogamete with a microgamete, we form a zygospore. Isogamy and anisogamy are primitive modes of reproduction in algae. The other mode of reproduction in algae is ugamy. And ugamy is the most advanced form of reproduction in algae. What happens? We have gametes that are small, highly motile, and many, fusing with, and these are what we call antherozoids. As you can see, antherozoids, they are analogous to the sperm in the animal kingdom. So these are antherozoids, and they're produced in what we call an antheridium. Then we have them fusing with an egg or an ovum, and this ovum is produced in what we call an oogonium. There was a mistake here. This is an oogonium. So the two fuse together and they form what we call an oospore. So oogamy is the fusion of an antherozoid with an egg to form an oospore. Form an oospore. So just to repeat myself, we said algae has three modes of reproduction: vegetative, sexual, and asexual. We've discussed all of them. So after that, we need to look at the importance of algae. Importance of algae. Algae, as remember, we are looking at applied phycology. So algae has as many importances as possible. So we are going to look at some of them. The first one is food. First one is food. I believe many of you at least have seen this. Or some of you have seen this. Actually, I for one have not seen this, but at least I've seen this. I've seen a burger having lettuce, or I've seen it having weed. So this is all algae. So the first importance is food. So algae and man have been compatible for so long because algae is food. Today, algae as a source of food is is used in a variety of countries. For example, Norway, Ireland, Sweden, France, German, North and South America, China, and other countries. And algae is fed on in different ways. Some people eat it as a salad, others fry it with meat, others eat it as a vegetable, others put it as something to spice food, others use it as a flavor, others get what is it called, beverages from it, and research has shown that the algae has a very high concentration of mineral nutrients like proteins, carbohydrates, fats, and vitamins, which are very important to us. Um, an example, they usually eat marine algae, the so-called sea lettuce, Entomopha compressa, Laminaria, Socharia, and others. But what I need you to know that algae is eaten as a source of food, and the best example I can give you is this. This has a seaweed somewhere, which is algae, and these are prepared snacks for people to eat. What are they going to eat? Algae. Okay, we go back. Number two is fodder. So we not only feed on algae as a source of food, but also, and some animals have developed love for algae. For example, um, in Norway, in Sweden, in Denmark, in South America, in Scotland, there is what they call the sheep's weed, or what they call Rhodemia palmate. So Rhodemia palmate is known as the sheep's weed because the sheep are very fond of this type of algae. Um, are very fond of this type of algae. It is very sweet for them. And on top of that, research has shown that animals that feed on given types of algae, for example, if I'm rearing chicken, the eggs will have a very high content of um, a very high content of iodine, more stronger shells, while cows that are fed on algae will have a lot of butter fat content in their meal compared to those ones that don't have any access to the seaweed meal. I think I have an image here. So this is algae that has been collected from one of the northern oceans. I think this was, I'm not sure, I don't remember the exact ocean that they had collected it from, but it's going to be processed into animal feeds, and it is given to them as supplement. Okay. Next is pisciculture. Pisciculture, where they grow algae to feed on fish. Where they grow algae to feed on fish. So very many great fishing grounds, especially those of the sea, where fish is present in large numbers, they grow algae. They grow algae, especially green algae, diatoms, and some blue-green bacteria are eaten by fish. So algae is also a source of food for fish. I remember in my A level, I used to have my geography teacher telling me of the Guyana droppings. So the Guyana droppings, the Guyana birds found along the coast of Peru. Yeah, coast of Peru. So you tell us that these birds are, through their droppings in water, the droppings would fertilize the ocean, and you'd have a lot of algae growing, and that algae would be a source of food to the fish. And it's not surprising that by then, I don't know, not sure the recent statistics, Peru was among the world's largest fishing nations. So, but on top of that, algae not only acts as a source of food for fish, but it also takes out the carbon dioxide and enriching the waters with oxygen through its photosynthesis. Number three, algae is used in making of fertilizers. So, large brown and red algae are obtained, cut down, and used to make fertilizers. The seaweed I showed you earlier, is gotten on top of other chemicals, which is broken down from liquid fertilizers. And these liquid fertilizers are very important or good sources of nitrogen, enriching the soil, making it highly productive. Then next, algae is used in the reclamation of alkaline land, or what they call user land. So studies have shown that a lot of land that is extremely alkaline does not favor the growth of plants. So what do they do in this case? I've said the alkaline land is sometimes known as the user land, USAR, user land. So what do they do? During the rainy season, they get blue green algae, especially the one that belongs to the genus Nostoc and Anabaena. And these algae will are grown in waterlogged conditions. And after some time, the studies show that the pH will fall from 9 to 5 or 7 to 6, and the organic content of the soil increases from 36 to 50% or 59 to 70%. But on top of that, the Anabaena algae, or the Anabaena, is highly, or it's a very good enricher of nitrogen. So the combination of nostoc and anabaena also greatly improves the nitrogen content of the soil, which makes the soil highly productive. So we've seen algae being used as a fertilizer, but in this case, it can also be used to reclaim alkaline land. Best example of alkaline land is land around mines. And then the other thing is algae can be used to bind soil particles. Soil particles. Members of the class cyanophycin are used. Cyanophycin are pioneer community members used in formation of soil, while other algae, especially blue-green algae, can be grown to hold soil particles together, thus reducing the dangers of soil erosion. Then algae has a variety, or is a source of a variety of products, as we shall discuss later. This is just a hint. Number one is agar. So what is agar? Agar is a non-nitrogenous extract obtained in a pure mucilaginous form, and it is obtained from members of phylum Rhodophyta or red algae, for example, Gelidium and Conium. So when they get this mucilage, they collect it. They get the algae, they collect them, they bleach them, and they pull out the mucilage within them. Then they get that mucilage and purify it furthermore to form agar. And agar has a lot of importances. Number one, it is used in microbiology and tissue culture. They use it in cosmetics to make those gel-like cosmetics. They use it in paper bleaching. They use it in silk industries to hold silk threads together. It is used in dentistry for making impressions. Oh, I think I should also try this. But do I have the man? I'm also not sure. They use it in canning of fish. That is why when you open the fish can, there is a lot of gel. That is agar. Um, and they usually put it in fish that is a little bit softer. By the time you buy the fish, it is not completely into pieces. But it's also used in the making of ice cream, jellies, and candies. I have an image here of agar. This is agar powder, water, gel, and I think this is what's supposed to be is meant to be used in the lab for microbiology and tissue culture. Okay, then we have another product called carrageenan. So carrageenan is similar to agar because it is also a metabolic product derivative, and it is obtained from algae called Chondrus crispus. And what is the importance of this agar? It is used in paper bleaching, it is used in textile industries, it is used in making of straws and felt hats because it can make things very stiff, used in making of Vaseline, leave alone these slimy cosmetics we use, but that hard Vaseline on top of petrol used in making of shoe polish and lotions, toothpaste. And then it is also used as an emulsifying agent. It's also used in bakeries and other industries. Then we have algae and alginates. Algin is a salt made up of calcium and magnesium. Then and these salts are used in a variety of things like ice cream, salad cream, custard, jams, cosmetics, and other things. So then we have medicinal use. We've already said we've already said that algae can be used as an anticoagulant. It is also used once mixed with other things. It can be used in treatment of ulcers and restoring appetite after sickness. It can also, since it is rich in a lot of chemicals, it can be used as an anticoagulant. Then agar, we've already talked of agar. Agar is used in making of medicine, and the same point applies to antibiotics. There is a product called Coleraline, and coleraline is obtained from an algae called Corella, and it is used in treatment of coliforms and other intestinal bacteria. Then mineral extraction. So algae, especially large brown algae, especially what they call the kelps, belonging to the phylum Laminales, is used or is highly rich in minerals like sodium sulfate, potassium chloride and potassium sulfate, iodine, and bromine. So what do? They get the algae, burn it, and after burning it, the ash that remains is the one that they extract the minerals from. Then still the laminarians produce mannitol. We shall look at mannitol later, and that mannitol is used in a lot of food and medicinal products, and they also use it to make inks, plastics, and mucilage, especially that is put in medicines. Then we have another product from algae, which is diatomite. So diatomite is from the fossils of diatoms. We shall look at diatoms briefly. Oh, kesilga. This word here, kesilga. So what happens? These diatoms are highly rich in silica, and silica We know that silica is found in sand. That means also these diatoms are rich in silica, which silica is a component of glasses and granite rock. So what is the importance of these diatoms? Number one, they're used to make insulators, they're used to make filtering agents, they're used in industrial filtration process, they're used in making of wine and breweries. Then the last algal product is phenol. So phenol is similar to agar, but for it is mainly used to make glue. It is mainly used to make glue. Then the last positive importance of algae is water treatment. As you must have discussed earlier in your lower levels, you know that water treatment involves microorganisms. So one of the most effective microorganisms, or one of the most effective living organisms in treatment of wastewater is algae. So because aerobic bacteria cannot meet up to the demands, or because aerobic bacteria require a lot of oxygen that is not readily available, what happens is this. In many wastewater treatment plants, they are what we call microfilms, and these microfilms have algae on them. So what does this algae do? It will get the ammoniacal wastes in water that have a high energy demand for oxygen, absorb them and convert them into proteins. And on top of that, they carry out photosynthesis. And as they're carrying out photosynthesis, they're producing more oxygen. And this oxygen will be used by aerobic bacteria to survive. But on top of that, they are also using up the carbon dioxide still for their photosynthesis, making wastewater treatment a very effective process. Still, I need to remind you, if you need a full copy of these notes, please check the description box below for the link, and it will take you direct where you can access these notes. What are some of the harmful aspects of algae? Number one, algal blooms. What we use and algal blooms. I think I have an image here to show us an algal bloom. Yes, here is an algal bloom. You can see this poor fish, poor as it is, suffering from the increased effects of algal blooms. So, what happens when there is excess nutrient enrichment of water? Bodies a process defined as eutrophication. We tend to have a lot of algae growing, and this algae growing can be in pure strands or it can be mixed. Mixed meaning that it is made up of several species. So what is the overall effect of this algal growth? Because someone said, but algae, so long as we have a lot of algae, the fish have a lot of food to feed on, but that is not true. Number one, the algae will impart on the color of the water and making the water very smelly, and number two, they will choke the gills of the fish. But on top of that, when these algae die, they will sink to the bottom of the pond, bottom of the lake, and they need to be broken down by aerobic bacteria. So as these aerobic bacteria are breaking down these algae, they are competing for oxygen with the existing aquatic organisms. And research shows that the bacteria are more effective compared to the living organisms, natural selection. So the aquatic organisms have to suffer. They have to suffer locally. They have to suffer locally, and the fish many times become out competed. On top of that, still these algae produce toxins. They produce toxins, hepatotoxins, dermatotoxins that are highly poisonous to the aquatic organisms, leading to the death of fish leading to the death of cattle that will feed on the water, leading to the death of birds that will feed on the water. Um, then also algae cause water pollution. They cause water pollution because the word pollution simply means unpleasant. So they cause water pollution by giving water a bad taste. On top of that, they make the water smell a lot, making it unbearable for people to consume. Then, and besides, sometimes if they want to measure the level of water pollution, one of the measures they use is checking on the growth of algae. Then disease producing algae, we've already talked of the Cephorus that produces the tea. That produces the red rust in tea. Then there are others that also cause other diseases. That was it for today. That was it for today. We shall. These are some. Yes, that was it for today. Those are some of the references that I've read to prepare for this short presentation. If you like it, please tell a friend to tell a friend that Translate 256 solve the scientific mystery. Uh, the notes. If you enjoyed this one, please subscribe and follow us for more. Till next time, I'll continue.